Off the coast of Colombia, in the warm Caribbean, there are hundreds of islands. Almost all of them are empty. Quiet beaches, mangroves, clear water, no one there. Except one. On a patch of land the size of 2 football fields, somewhere between 800 and over 1,000 people live packed together. No cars, because there is no room for a road. No cemetery, because there is no room for the dead. And fresh water only when a boat brings it in from the mainland. It is one of the most crowded places on the entire planet, and it sits in the middle of one of the emptiest. Here is the strange part. These people built this island themselves, by hand, out of coral and stone. Nobody forced them here. And if you ask them, almost none of them want to leave. The question is not how they survive on something this small. The question is why, with an entire empty sea around them, they choose to stay this close together. Find the answer. You have to take a boat out into the San Bernardo Islands and see it for yourself. The empty sea and the one full island. Start in Cartagena, the old walled city on Colombia's Caribbean coast, all colonial balconies and sea forts, one of the most beautiful and most visited places in South America. From there, the boats head south into the Gulf of Morrosquillo toward the San Bernardo Archipelago, a scattering of islands ringed by coral reef and mangrove. From Cartagena, the trip takes around 4 hours. From the small port town of Tolu, closer down the coast, only about 45 minutes. The islands you pass are the picture of empty tropical paradise. White sand, palms leaning over turquoise water, a handful of quiet hotels on larger islands like Mucura and Tintipan, and long stretches where there is simply nobody at all. Beneath the boat, the reefs slide past in the clear shallows. At night, in places here, the water glows faintly with plankton. This is the emptiness the crowd will sit inside. And then you see it, a low gray and white mass rising straight out of the sea, with no beach, no trees, no gap around the edges, just buildings packed shoulder to shoulder right down to the waterline. The whole island is only about 1.2 hectares, roughly 200 meters long and 120 meters wide. 2 football fields, give or take. As the boat gets closer, the mass resolves into houses, painted in fading blues and yellows and greens, their walls almost touching across the alleys, and then into people, everywhere, on doorsteps and jetties and rooftops. And you begin to understand that this really is a town, a full one, complete with its own streets and school and church, squeezed onto a speck of rock in the middle of an empty sea. To put the crowding in perspective, researchers calculate its population density at upwards of 60,000 to over 100,000 people per square kilometer, depending on the season. swelling even further when families return or the island fills to the brim.
It is several times denser than Manhattan, except there are no towers here to stack people upward, only low houses pressed side by side. You could walk from one end of the island to the other in well under 2 minutes, if the streets were ever empty enough to let you, which they never are. It is, by most reckonings, the single most densely populated island on the planet. And nobody planned it that way. There was no developer, no government scheme. It simply grew, family by family, until the land ran out. And then, as we will see, the islanders did the only thing they could. They made more land. The island they built by hand. Santa Cruz del Islote was not here 2 centuries ago. There was only a small coral reef just under the surface. The story the islanders tell begins in the middle of the 19th century, around the 1860s, with a group of fishermen, most of them Afro-Colombian, working these waters far from home. They needed somewhere to rest between long days at sea, somewhere closer than the mainland. And when they camped on this little coral outcrop, they noticed something that changed everything. There were almost no mosquitoes. On the mangrove islands nearby, the insects made sleeping miserable. Here, with no beach and no mangrove, the air was clear. That was enough. They started to stay. But the reef was tiny, barely anything to stand on, so they made more of it. Load by load, over generations, the settlers built their island up and out, hauling in coral, shells, stones, rubble, tree trunks from the neighboring islands, whatever the sea and their neighbors could give them, filling the shallows at low tide until there was ground firm enough to put a house on. Then another house, and another. As families grew and new babies were born, the island itself had to grow to hold them. And so it did, meter by painstaking meter, reclaimed from the water by hand. Santa Cruz del Islote is quite literally handmade. There is no natural soil beneath it, no bedrock that rose from the sea. Every square meter of ground was carried here and set down by someone's grandparents or their grandparents before them. When the islanders say this is their land, they mean it more completely than almost anyone else alive. They did not find it, they built it. And because it grew from a few families, it is still, in a sense, one family. Most of the island shares only a handful of surnames. Nearly everyone here is somebody else's cousin or aunt or godparent. When people say the island is close-knit, they do not only mean it is friendly. They mean it is quite literally woven from the same few bloodlines, tied together over more than a century and a half into a single enormous extended household that happens to be shaped like a town. That is worth holding on to as we walk its streets, because it explains almost everything that follows. How it stays so safe, why nobody locks a door, and why a place with every reason to feel unbearable feels, to the people who live there, like the safest home there is. A tiny island that has everything. What is remarkable once you step off the boat is not what the island lacks, it is how much it fits. Onto that patch of land, the islanders have packed somewhere around 100 houses, 4 narrow streets, and almost everything a community needs. There is a school, there is a church, there is a small health post, a restaurant, a little bar, and a few shops selling the essentials. The streets are so narrow that in places you can touch the walls on both sides at once, and not one of them is wide enough for a car, which is fine because there is not a single car on the island. You walk or you take a boat. The school tells you a lot about the place. It holds around 240 students and is taught by a dozen teachers, some of whom travel by boat each day from other islands. And it is full, because Santa Cruz del Islote is overwhelmingly young. By some counts, around 65% of the population is under 18. This is an island of children. Their classrooms spill out into the open, lessons mixing with the sound of the sea just meters away. And alongside reading and arithmetic, they learn something the mainland cannot teach them: what it means to belong to a place like this. But the school only runs to about the 10th grade. After that, a teenager who wants to keep studying has to leave, taking a boat to Tulu or Cartagena, and for many of them, that is the first time they have ever really left the island, where everyone knows their name. It is one of the quiet aches of the place. To grow up here is wonderful. To grow beyond it, you almost always have to go. There is more packed into these 4 streets than you would believe possible. A little bar, a restaurant, shops the size of a closet selling rice, batteries, and cold drinks. Even a tiny aquarium, a cluster of tanks with small sharks and rays that visitors pay a few coins to see. Nothing here is big. Everything here is close. And all of it, remarkably, is enough. A day in the crowd. To see how all these lives fit together, you have to watch an ordinary day unfold. It starts on the water. Before dawn, the men take their small wooden boats out to fish, as their families have done for 6 generations. And later in the morning, they come back and clean and mend right there in the alleys, nets draped over doorways. But it would be a mistake to think the men go to work and the women stay home. On Santa Cruz del Islote, the women are, if anything, the engine of the place. They run the shops and the food stalls, they cook for the visitors, and they manage the single hardest job on the island, which is water. Storing it, rationing it, making it last. One of them serves as the island's midwife and has, over the years, delivered more than 200 of its children into the world in a place with no hospital. Islanders will tell you, only half joking, that the women here are more enterprising than the men. By the middle of the day, the island is at its busiest. The sun is heavy, the alleys hold the heat, and life crowds into every patch of shade. Women sell snacks and cold drinks from doorways and small tables. Somewhere, a radio is always playing. And a few times a day, a boat noses in from Cartagena or Tulu, and a small group of visitors steps ashore to see the most crowded island on Earth, guided through the lanes for an hour before heading back out to the quiet beaches nearby. For the islanders, those visitors are part of the economy now, another thread in a living that is stitched together from fishing, from selling, from 100 small jobs, and from a little money brought in by the outside world's curiosity about their extraordinary home. The elders have their own place in the day.
They sit in the shade of the porches, weaving baskets, telling the younger ones stories of a time when the sea was fuller and had to be respected, passing down what the island is and where it came from. In a community with no library and no museum, the old people are the archive. What the island remembers, it remembers through them. And there are more of them than you might expect in such a hard place.
Islanders will tell you with quiet pride that people here tend to live long lives, many well into their 80s and beyond, which they put down to the sea air, the simple food, and above all, the fact that on this island, nobody grows old alone. And everywhere, in every gap and doorway and sliver of open ground, there are the children. There are so many of them that the island can feel at times like one enormous playground. They play football in spaces barely big enough for it, using a wall or a doorway as a goal. They jump off the edges of the island straight into the sea and haul themselves back up, dripping, to do it again. They chase each other under the washing lines and through the alleys, and no matter how far they run, they are never out of sight of someone who knows them. That is the thing about a place where everyone is family. No child here is ever really unsupervised, because every adult is, in a sense, a parent. The crowding is real, and it is intimate. It is common for several families to share one house, and for 10 people to sleep in a single room. On hot nights with the power off, children simply sleep outside, on rooftops or in doorways under the stars. Privacy, in the way most of us mean it, barely exists here. Your neighbor is a thin wall away, and their day and yours are lived half in the same narrow street. And yet, somehow, it works. It works because everyone grew up inside it, and because closeness here is not a problem to be solved. It is simply the shape of life. When the sun goes down and the heat finally loosens, the whole island comes out of doors. People pull plastic chairs into the street, music comes on, and conversations pick up exactly where they left off that morning. Children who cannot sleep in the heat lie out on the rooftops. Somewhere a domino game is running. Fishermen talk over the day's catch, and grandmothers hold court on their porches. There is no cinema here, no mall, no park, none of the places the rest of the world goes to be entertained. There is only this: the street, the neighbors, the warm dark, and each other. And for the people of Santa Cruz del Islote, that has always been enough. Music, dominoes, and the Feast of the Cross. That togetherness has a sound and a rhythm of its own, and it runs deep in the island's Afro-Colombian roots. Music is everywhere. Older couples dance champeta, the fast, sensual Caribbean sound born on this coast. Teenagers lean against walls, listening to Spanish-language rap. And on feast days, the traditional cumbia comes out, with its drums and its slow, swaying steps. The food is pure Caribbean, too. Fish pulled from the surrounding water that morning, lobster and shrimp, rice cooked with coconut, fried plantain, and slow fish stews of the kind that simmer all afternoon and feed whoever happens to be near when they are ready. These are simple meals, made with what the sea and the supply boats bring, and made with care. and very often they are shared between houses, because on an island this tight, a good pot of food rarely stays in one home. The smell of someone's lunch is everyone's business, and an extra plate for a neighbor is simply how things are done. That habit of sharing runs through everything. When one family cooks, the pot often feeds more than one household. When one boat comes back heavy, the catch gets spread around. In a place with no room for anyone to hoard and nowhere for anyone to hide, generosity is not so much a virtue as a way of surviving. Everyone will need a favor eventually, and everyone knows it. Then there are the dominoes. It is hard to overstate how seriously this island takes its dominoes. Tables appear in the streets, the tiles come out with a clatter, and a game can turn into a gathering that runs for 2 or 3 days straight. Music blaring, food passing around, neighbors cycling in and out between shifts on the water. It is the island's true national sport, its town hall and its theater all at once, a way for a place with no open plaza to speak of to still gather in the open. And once a year, the whole community turns to the celebration it is named for, the Feast of the Holy Cross, the island's patron festival. For a few days, the narrow streets fill with color, music, and prayer. There are processions and dancing and the old cumbia rhythms, and a sense of the whole island moving as one body. The islanders honor their faith, their ancestors, and the small handmade patch of land that has held them all together for 6 generations. It is not a show put on for tourists. It is the island reminding itself who it is and where it came from. The island with no police. Now put all of that together and something surprising appears. This is one of the most crowded places on the planet, where people live almost on top of one another with next to no privacy. And it is also one of the calmest. There are no police on Santa Cruz del Islote. There's no jail. And by almost every account, there's very little crime to speak of. So little that people struggle to remember the last serious incident. On an island where everyone is related, where every face is known, and a dozen cousins would witness every argument, disputes tend to get settled quickly, quietly, and among neighbors, long before they could ever become anything worse. It runs against everything we assume. We tend to think that packing people this tightly, with this little privacy and this little to go around, is a recipe for tension, and that keeping the peace takes police and locks and walls. Santa Cruz del Islote suggests something else. Here, the very closeness that should breed conflict is exactly what prevents it. There is nowhere to hide, so there is little point in doing wrong. And there is nobody who is a stranger, so there is little reason to. The island is watched over, not by any authority, but by itself, constantly, gently, out of 100 windows and doorways at once. It is the quiet heart of why people stay, and especially why parents want to raise children here. In a country that has known more than its share of hardship, this tiny, overcrowded rock is one of the safest places a child could grow up. If you are enjoying this journey out to the crowded island, a like or a subscribe really does help the channel keep making these. Now, back to the island.
and to one of the strangest consequences of having no room at all.
No room for the dead.
An island this small has to make hard choices about space, and the hardest of them concerns the people it loses. There is no cemetery on Santa Cruz del Islote. There is simply nowhere to put one. Every square meter is spoken for by the living. So when someone here dies, the island holds its farewell in the only way it can. The body is carried through the narrow streets and around the small central square, past the houses and the people the person lived their whole life beside, in a last slow procession through the very heart of the community that raised them. Because the island is so small and so tightly bound, a death is never a private grief. It belongs to everyone, and everyone comes out for it. And then, after the goodbye, the body is taken down to a boat and carried across the water to be buried on the mainland or on a neighboring island with room in its ground for those this one cannot hold. There is something quietly moving in that. On this island, there is no room to be born in a hospital and no room to be buried in the earth. Life here begins and ends out on the water. But in between, for all the years that matter, you are never once alone. From hunting turtles to saving them. If you want a single story that captures how this island is changing, look at what happens now when a sea turtle swims into a fishing net. For generations, the answer was simple. The sea turtle was food, treated no differently than a chicken, killed and eaten, because the sea was there to be used and a family had to be fed. But in recent years, that has quietly turned around. Working with a conservation team from a hotel on a nearby island, the fishermen of Santa Cruz del Islote now carefully untangle the turtles that end up in their nets, and instead of killing them, they keep them safe until the team can come and collect them for release. The island even has a tiny aquarium, a few tanks holding small sharks, rays, and fish, which visitors can pay a little to see, and which doubles as a way for the community to earn from the sea without emptying it. It is a small thing, a handful of turtles, a few tanks, but it matters more than its size. This is a community that has lived off the reef for a century and a half and has watched, in its own lifetime, that reef grow quieter and its nets come back lighter. To choose to protect a turtle instead of eating it is to admit that the old ways of taking cannot go on forever, and to begin, cautiously, to give something back. On an island with almost nothing to spare, that is no small change of heart. Water, power, and the cost of being crowded. For all its warmth, life on Santa Cruz del Islote runs up against limits that never fully go away, and they start with the most basic thing of all: water. The island has no fresh water of its own. There is no well to dig, no spring, no river. The ground is coral and rubble, and the sea all around is salt. So every drop of drinking water has to come in by boat. The Colombian Navy is meant to deliver it regularly, but the reality is unreliable, and there are stretches where weeks, sometimes even longer, pass between deliveries. When the water runs low, the whole island tightens its belt, and the daily work of stretching what is left, measuring it, storing it, deciding what can and cannot be washed, falls largely to the women who run the households. Every roof that can catch rain does, funneling it into barrels and into a communal tank below the health post that the islanders call the lung of the island.
After a long dry stretch, when the rain finally comes, it is a genuine cause for celebration, and the collected water is shared out family by family so that no household is ever skipped. Water here is never taken for granted for a single day. Power came slowly, too. For years, the island had electricity only about 5 hours a day from a generator, which is part of why children ended up sleeping outside on hot nights with no fan to run indoors. Then, a gift of solar panels donated by Japan began to change that, bringing steadier power to a place the grid had never reached. Even so, electricity is far from constant. A generator runs for a few hours in the evening, and once it falls silent, much of the island slips into deep darkness, and life carries on by candlelight and the pale glow of phone screens saved up for exactly this. The internet arrived only in 2020 during the pandemic, and for the most practical of reasons, so that the island's children could keep going to school on a screen when they could not gather in a classroom. And the crowding that makes the place so warm also makes some problems harder. Waste and sanitation are a constant struggle where so many people share so little ground, and there is no room for proper infrastructure. And the fishing that has fed the island for a century and a half now brings back less and less as the reefs around it are pushed too hard by too many lines. So little comes back now that much of the fish eaten on the island and served to its visitors has to be brought in from the mainland, which is a strange fate for a community of fishermen. The island's oldest livelihood is thinning out at exactly the moment its population is at its most crowded. None of this has emptied the island, but it is a reminder that living this close to the edge on a handmade patch of coral leaves very little margin when things go wrong. And the biggest thing that could go wrong is the one the whole island can see coming. The rising sea. The sea that built this island and feeds it and surrounds it is also slowly coming for it. Santa Cruz del Islote sits barely above the waterline, and as the climate warms and the seas rise, the water is creeping higher, and the edges of the island are slowly wearing away. Already, when storms and high tides push in, the low streets can flood with seawater, which is one reason so many houses here are built with raised floors, a step up over the threshold, so the water can wash in and back out again without ruining the room. There's a bitter irony in it. A community that lives more simply and burns less than almost anyone on Earth, that added next to nothing to the warming of the planet, may be among the first to lose everything to it. The very real possibility hangs over the island that within a generation or two, its people could become climate refugees, pushed off the ground their great-grandparents carried here by hand. They are not waiting quietly for that to happen. Younger islanders, the same generation that turned from hunting turtles to protecting them, have begun to fight for their home in the ways they can, planting mangroves to hold the shoreline, nursing coral back on the reefs, cleaning the water, teaching the children why it matters. They know better than anyone that the sea both made this island and could unmake it. And they have decided, for now, to meet it not with despair, but with work. This raises a real question for anyone thinking of coming here. Santa Cruz del Islote has become a genuine tourist stop, usually as a short visit folded into a day trip around the San Bernardo Islands, with boats arriving from Cartagena and Tulum. The best time to come is the dry season, roughly December to March, when the Caribbean is calmest and the crossings easiest. Most visitors spend an hour walking the lanes, looking in at the aquarium,
and then move on to snorkel the reefs or swim at the quieter islands nearby, where at night the water can light up with glowing plankton.
And there is a fair debate about all of it. Some worry that filing tourists through such a poor and crowded place turns hard lives into a spectacle, a kind of sightseeing that takes more than it gives. It is a worry worth taking seriously, but handled with respect, that same tourism brings real income and real attention to a community that badly needs both, especially now with the sea rising and the fish thinning.
The islanders themselves, for the most part, would rather you came and looked and listened and left understanding something true about how they live. What they ask is only that you see them as people, at home, and not as an exhibit.
Why they stay.
So we come back to the question we started with. With a whole empty sea around them, why did these people choose to live this close together?
The answer is not that they have no choice. Many islanders could leave. Some do, for school or for work, but most come back, and most who stay would not trade it. Because what this crowded little island offers is exactly what all that empty water cannot.
Here you are known. Here your children are safe, watched over by 100 relatives. Here, when there is food, it is shared. And when there is trouble, it is faced together. And when your life finally ends, you are carried one last time through streets full of people who loved you.
The island is short on space and water and privacy and easy answers. It is not short on belonging. That is the trade these 1,000 people have made and keep making generation after generation. All the room in the world on those empty islands nearby, or all the closeness in the world on this one handmade rock. They chose closeness. They chose each other. And in an age when so much of the world grows lonelier the wealthier it gets, there is something in that choice worth sitting with, even for those of us who would never make it.
So here is the question we will leave you with. If you could live surrounded by open space and quiet, with all the room in the world, but mostly on your own, or packed tight among people who would never once let you be alone, which would you truly choose? Tell us in the comments. We read them. And if you would like to keep exploring places like this, the ones that live in the quiet gaps of the map, subscribe, and we will see you on the next island, in the next corner of the world most people never reach.